What is up, guys? This is me, Johnny Cooper 64 here with another YouTube video, and today's my birthday and I wanted to celebrate it by reviewing one of my favorite games on the PS4, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. The Insane Trilogy includes the original trilogy, Crash Bandicoot 1, Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back, and Crash Bandicoot 3 Warp. These games were created by Naughty Dog during the PS1 era, and these are the best trilogy games in the Crash Bandicoot series because of how beautiful and well crafted these games are. Naughty Dog did put a lot of care into it and tried to add as many detail as they could fit in the game as possible. Some were cut due to the PlayStation 1's graphic limitations. After Naughty Dog created the original Crash trilogy and Crash Team Racing, Universal handed the Crash series to another developer to make the games, and there's where Crash started to kind of fall. The developers were unexperienced with the Crash games, and that's why Naughty Dog's Crash era is the best. The games we all know and love, and thankfully it's the games that got remastered. After Mind Over Mutant, Crash Bandicoot was left to rot and die as Activision had no plans for Crash and were focused more on shooting games, aka Call of Duty and stuff like that. When Eric Hirshberg took over as the CEO of Activision, he brought in Skylanders, a platformer that is well known for being a Toys to Life type of game, with the main character being Spyro the Dragon. The series was a huge success, and it left people wondering if Crash Bandicoot was going to join Spyro in the game, or will he have new games. The years went by and there were rumors of Crash being back, but nothing really confirmed. After almost 10 years of no new Crash games, Crash Bandicoot was announced during E3 2016, with the original trilogy being remastered from the ground up and him being a guest in the new Skylanders game, Skylanders Imaginators, due to Crash being its 20th anniversary. People, included me, were super hyped and glad that Crash Bandicoot has finally returned after so many years of being inactive. Activision at first was not planning on having Crash Bandicoot get his own game, hence Insane Trilogy almost didn't happen, and they were going to celebrate his 20th anniversary of him being in Skylanders, and then he was done for. But Eric Hirshberg was a big fan of Crash Bandicoot, and he greenlit the idea for his remaster to be announced, and 1 year later the Insane Trilogy was released on the PS4 and later on multi-platform. Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy was created by Vicarious Visions, who has previously made Crash Bandicoot games in the past like Crash Nitro Kart, Crash Entrance, Crash the Huge Adventure, and much more. They did a pretty fantastic job with Insane Trilogy, as they have not had a source code which was not provided by Naughty Dog, so that made their jobs really hard on doing the game, but it came out really beautiful and almost exactly like the original trilogy, but much better. Basically, the game was remade from scratch, and that's really impressive. The Insane Trilogy is coated with polish, along with updating the graphics, of course, updating the environment, the platforming, the gameplay, and basically everything entirely, and it makes the classic games we played before more modern for the new generation. Every detail that Naughty Dog tried to do in the original trilogy is now added here with even more detail to make the game more colorful and make you feel like you're a kid again. The visuals are absolutely outstanding, with the trees and the grass moving and feeling natural, and the way the water looks in the levels and how it looks realistic. I love how the water is different depending on the level you're on. Sometimes the water is like normal, sometimes the water is dark, sometimes the water is bright, or sometimes it's like mud water, and many more. And it depends on the location or on the area you're playing on in the level, as how the water looks like. The graphics are absolutely beautiful and outstanding. They are really appealing and really colorful, and has like lots of detail being put into the game, and how the game works, while adding realism in some stuff during the game while keeping it cartoon like in the originals. I explored the new details Vicarious Visions added to the game each time I revisit and see things I haven't seen before, and that's what makes the games amazing. Seeing the old games you played before when you were a kid and then seeing it remade beautifully makes me explode into tears. The levels look absolutely amazing on how the graphics look and feel more modern while keeping the game classic and adding lots of new detail and polish to it. The engine this game is made is Alchemy, which was first used in Crash Nitro Kart, believe it or not. The engine evolved and created the masterpiece we know today, Insane Trilogy. The models are remade, of course, while keeping it like the originals. They also made them more different to make it more modern, and of course make it more OG for Vicarious Visions, if they it's like their signature characters, like these guys, Vicarious Visions, made the models, you know. Crash, Koala Kong, Ripperoo, and other characters have fur now, and it makes the characters more realistic with this and more colorful, of course, making it more modern and making the characters more appealing for the new generation. Other characters are remodeled as well, and they all look exactly like their classic counterpart with a few changes. The original trilogy had such an amazing soundtrack that it felt like we were in the game. The music from the original trilogy was composed by Josh Mansell, who was sadly not hired to do the music in Insane Trilogy. Carries Visions and Activision wanted to do it cheap and not pay Mansell lots of money, you know, to do the music themselves. You know, they had to make the music themselves. You know, they didn't want to pay Josh Mansell to make the music, you know, along with not using the music that was pre-console. And the Insane Trilogy soundtrack is surprisingly not really bad. It's actually really good. While not like the original trilogy, Vicarious Visions made the soundtrack really similar to it while adding new sounds and making some things different in the songs, you know, keeping it super amazing and outstanding. And, you know, while keeping it like the original, they made it more their style. The song fits some of the levels from the game, but some songs don't really fit the level's tone, and it removes the atmosphere that the original game had. For example, the slippery climb level. In the original, the song felt more to the game and made the level way more terrifying, you know, making your thumbs sweat while you're jumping through platform to platform while hearing the music go to the beat with the level going along with music raining down. Sadly, the Insane Trilogy doesn't have this, and the music's tone is really different and the level doesn't feel anything like the original had. But besides some levels, there are some songs that feel superior to the original, like Dingo Dow's theme song and much more, so I have to get props to Vicarious Visions on doing the music. Speaking of soundtrack, the sounds in the background, like when Crash is moving, you know, there's lots of footstep sounds and how it sounds different when you go through, you know, like the puddle and like the sand, you know, the concrete and, you know, other platforms. The footstep sounds change naturally, along with adding additional background sounds to make the game more modern and feel more amazing. The soundtracks and sounds are absolutely fantastic, and I give Vicarious Visions a big high five for that. Let's go inside the trilogy now and see the changes Vicarious Visions added to the game and if it lives up to the original. The menu is completely different from the original. We don't get the menu that we have for the original trilogy, you know, like individually, but what do we expect? Other games that are remastered have the same menu screens, you know, kind of like, you know, like the Insane Trilogy, which, you know, makes it easier to select the games as well. I love how each game is separated by the theme of the game. You know, Crash 1's theme is the jungle, Crash's 2 theme is the snow, and Crash's 3 theme is, you know, time travel / futuristic. We start with Crash Bandicoot 1, and the plot is basically Cortex kidnaps Tana and Crash has to go and save her. That's basically it. The cutscene in the beginning of Crash 1 is gotta be one of the best things I've seen before. The animation is outstanding. I love how Lex Lang performs Cortex's character and makes him evil and lovable at the same time. The old Cortex from the original is more serious, while the remastered one is more comedic and to insanity, like to make the, you know, the villain more appealing to younger audience. Cortex appears more than in the original cutscene, and the mouth sings, you know, with what they're saying, of course, because, you know, we have more advanced technology now. We also get to see Embryo with his quirkiness, and he's absolutely funny the way he talks and, you know, and moves while he's doing it. It gives the character more personality and I like it. Crash looks goofy and lovable during the times he's in the cutscene. Tana is also back, and this time she's not messing around. She actually does something that most female protagonists don't do in video games, and that's defend themselves. She beats up a lab assistant and makes her feel badass. You know, this alone makes her outstand the other female protagonists in other games. But of course, she gets captured, but at least, you know, she tried to defend herself. Insanity Beach looks beautiful, the way the waves move and sounds while the classic music comes in remastered. The way the trees and grass moves feels natural, and the way when Crash moves, you know, step by step, leaving footmarks in the sand while making a few dusty clouds there and there. Everything is really colorful and pops up to you while you're looking at the game. Crash Bandicoot feels really heavy in this game, surprisingly. Like they were trying to go for more a realism approach on this, along with other things in the game as well. They added kind of like more realistic and I guess more modern type of feel, you know, instead of it being super easy to lift and easy to jump and stuff like that, So this changes the way you play in the first game, and especially in Crash Bandicoot 2 and Crash Bandicoot 3. But I like how they went for a more heavy Crash to make the games, up to date and more realistic, while keeping a cartoon, of course. The other levels like Up Greek's Water is fantastic, and how it looks really realistic. And it's not just the water, you can actually see through it, and some games don't actually do that. And that's what I like about Sane Trilogy. The other levels in Crash 1 are well done as well, and look exactly like in the original, while Crash 1 is the weakest of the trilogy due to, limited things you're able to do in the original Crash, like his moveset and how the levels are a bit more closed and, more linear, unlike, how Crash 2 and 3 change the movesets and make the levels a bit more wider while keeping it linear. But Crash Bandicoot 1 is the most changed out of the trilogy besides the graphics. I actually enjoy this game a lot, and it's actually my favorite game in the Sane Trilogy due to the changes and how difficult the game is out of the trilogy. During the original, when you were breaking the boxes, you had to make sure to not get killed once. Even if you had the checkpoint, you couldn't die even if you wanted to get the jumps. The Sane Trilogy fixed that, and when you reach a checkpoint, the boxes are still there, and there is no need to backtrack at all, and that's what I like about the Sane Trilogy Crash 1. The color gems are an exception in the Sane Trilogy. You can't die in those levels in order to get the color gem, and that was an amazing idea Vicarious Visions did to make the game more challenging, and it adds more variety. Crash 1 and Crash 2 have box count meters like Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, showing how many boxes you have broken and how many you need left to break. The bonus stages are now replayable in Crash Bandicoot 1 as they have portable while you're accessing it, and you can play it as many times as you want, which is something the original trilogy didn't do, or the original Crash didn't do. Coco is now fully playable in all 3 games. She controls exactly like Crash Bandicoot, it's just like a little reskin, but has her own animations to make it more different and more appealing. Which is an amazing idea they did, and I'm glad they're paying more attention to Coco this time. She sadly can't enter any boss fight for the exception of Engine for the 3rd game, along with other exclusive Crash Bandicoot levels like, the Polar Bear level or the Hog Wild or Hog Ride levels. There's also time trials in Crash 1. They don't give you the running shoes or any ability due to Crash's 1 moveset. You just walk normally, but still have to reach the end of the level in time. But I didn't really like this idea at first, but now I understand that it's actually fair and it gives the game more variety and make the game more challenging. There's also an autosave in the game, so you don't have to go to the bonus rounds and save your game there. You can just save it automatically or save it yourself manually. The difficult dynamic feature that Crash 2 and Crash 3 are now in the first game. Basically, you get more Aku masks, and if you're having trouble with the level you're in, it makes one of the box crates to a checkpoint, which is a nice addition to for a younger audience who are having trouble in the game. They also added the deleted level from the original game, Stormy Ascent. That level was super hard in the original trilogy, and that's why it was cut in the final game, but it returned in the Sane Trilogy as a DLC with time trials, and I got to say that it's absolutely amazing, and the bonus round is a new level that Vicarious Visions made themselves, and it's actually pretty difficult and challenging, so Vicarious Visions need some praise for that. Vicarious Visions also gave Papo more health bars to make his boss more challenging for a younger audience, and sadly they removed Rippero's classic laugh that we all knew and love. Instead of improving on the laugh, they made it more weaker and more terrible, sadly. Crash 1 is slow paced, and the levels are either short or super long, unlike the other Crash games where the levels, were about a fair amount of the same time, you spend on each level, and, Crash 1's is, slow paced. Crash Bandicoot 1 overall is such an improvement to the original Crash game, and it's my favorite in the Sane Trilogy. Crash Bandicoot fans will adore Crash 1 as well, but sadly it won't leave a good impression to younger audience since Crash 1 is super hard and it's really different from Crash Bandicoot 2 and Crash Bandicoot 3. So I recommend younger audience to play Crash Bandicoot 2 first, and then Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped, and then try the first game, as you gain experience from those Crash games, to go in for the first game that started it all, and knowing that it's going to be challenging. But it's still one of the best games in the trilogy, and I do wish they added more stuff in the games and in the levels to make it longer and keep up to date with Crash Bandicoot 2. But it's still a fantastic game, and I rate Crash Bandicoot 1 8 out of 10 IGN. For Crash Bandicoot 2, the game takes place right after Crash Bandicoot 1, with Cortex falling and basically discovering the purple crystal, which becomes a recurring element for the rest of the Crash Bandicoot series. He needs to collect all of them to use, the Cortex Vortex, to destroy the world or something, but doesn't have enough friends to find the crystals, so he uses his enemy from Crash Bandicoot 1, Crash Bandicoot, to find the crystals for him. Crash 2 is my favorite game in the original trilogy because of how beautiful and how well the game is. The intro is outstanding, and I love the improvement they did, along with adding additional lines there and there. There's also Naughty Dog references in the cutscenes, as well, like the meteor having the Naughty Dog paw, and Nathan Drake and Elena playing Crash Bandicoot 1 from Uncharted 4 in Coco's laptop. Once we enter the warp room, it's more brighter, which I love since Crash Bandicoot 2 is more darker. But the only complaint I have is when Cortex shows up in the hologram, the room is supposed to go dark so we can focus on Dr. Cortex. Sadly, they didn't do that in the Insane Trilogy, and it was still the same brightness after Cortex leaves or before he enters the holograms. The levels are more longer and are fair enough to give the player satisfaction, along with adding details in the background and with characters as well. Now you don't need to go up to the little elevator thing, to enter a boss battle. There's now a room for the boss battle in the warp room you're in. There's also extra levels you can access after you beat the game, but they're hidden and are basically a secret, and this was in the original games as well. There's also death roots and gems, they return, and this time it's more challenging and more fun to collect, which is a nice addition that they added, and I'm glad that they did that. Crash Bandicoot 2 is more improved over Crash Bandicoot 1 in how Crash controls. Crash 1's, limited the amount of movement you can do, but in Crash Bandicoot 2, you can slide, jump higher, and body slam along with ducking. Lots of cool new stuff, and that's what makes Crash Bandicoot 2 and Crash Bandicoot 3 great. But Crash Bandicoot 2 and Crash Bandicoot 3's physics are changed, of course, since Crash 1's controls were amazing and already challenging to make the game more difficult and, more like Crash Bandicoot 1. Vicarious Visions thought it was a great idea to change the controls and physics in Crash 2 and 3 to make the game more difficult. Lots of things are changed off because of the physics, and it's what angers lots of Crash Bandicoot fans, like the ice physics and the slow levels. The ice physics are very different and altogether much harder for the player. Crash accelerates too quickly and his top speed is considerably higher. Turning around after reaching top speeds takes a very long time unless you slide. Landing on ice after a jump cancels most of your momentum, and it's hard to jump from a standstill. It's more difficult in the new game, but just because it's hard, does not make it good. The jumping in the game, feels off basically, and it makes the players slide off on the platform that we're in, and it basically kills us. Vicarious Visions already confirmed that they did indeed change it, and the reason why the physics feel off is because the collisions can feel wonky when you land on them. It doesn't really feel right, and it changes the games a bit. This could also have improved, but it wasn't. Anyways, besides that, I love how they added fake Crash that they only appeared in Crash Bandicoot Warped to Crash 2 and now Crash 3 and Crash Bandicoot 1, appearing in a few levels and is just dancing there, and it's really fun, to see him there. It basically adds new stuff to Insane Trilogy, if only we can play as him. I also noticed how the Trilogy Remastered has more boxes than the original game. There's more boxes that you have to break. I guess, to add more variety to the game, I suppose. The bosses in the game is what makes things beautiful. I like the new models, and Tiny and Engine look absolutely amazing, along with Ripperoo returning once again. During the Crash 2 boss battles, you can now throw Wumpa Fruits at Engine, like throw it in the Hound instead of, the Wumpas appearing out of nowhere like in the originals. So I absolutely love that improvement they did. The final boss, which is Cortex, is still the same, but this time you have a reason to fight Cortex because he's carrying the Master Crystal and is reaching to his base, but I do wish they gave Cortex a gun so you can shoot while running because Crash 2's final boss still sucks. I wish they could have improved after you beat Cortex, but sadly they didn't. You unlock the same power up after you defeat Cortex in Warped. You get the speeding shoes. You can now run in the game to get the time trials like Warped, giving the game more things to do after you beat the game. Basically, you're now supposed to collect time trials in order to get platinum trophies. But overall, Crash Bandicoot 2 is the same as the originals for the exception of the physics, but it still looks really beautiful and better than ever. I love this game and its improvement and how things control from Crash 1, to Crash 2. This game is what changes how Crash controls from the rest of the series. The levels are colorful and beautiful and well made, and while the physics changed the game in a way, it's still a beautiful game and I'm glad it's polished. New players need to play this first so they can get a good experience in the Crash series, as this game is the strongest entry in the series and makes for a good first game. I rate Crash Bandicoot 2 8.5 out of 10 IGN. Now for Crash Bandicoot Warped. The story is basically after Crash Bandicoot 2, where the Cortex Vortex, breaks and explodes because Embryo and Crash Bandicoot and Coco team up in Crash Bandicoot 2 to get all the gems and destroy the Cortex Vortex, and it falls down and it lands to Uka Uka's grave or whatever it is, or pyramid, and it basically frees him, and it turns out that he's actually the mastermind behind the whole 3 original trilogy. And things leave up and it's basically time trial and stuff like that. Now the game plays like Crash Bandicoot 2 and is supposed to be an improvement as well. The game adds new features that Crash 2 didn't have, like the vehicle levels, getting to have Coco exclusive levels, and the games is about time travel. Basically going through back in time like the medieval world or Egypt, Wall of China, and much more. The cutscene is gorgeous and it adds lots of new detail to the game while adding, lots of Nathan Drake references there and there. It makes the cutscenes feel more modern, and Aku Aku finally speaks. The game is exactly like in the original. It has time trials, crystals, gems, and basically everything with no changes at all. The game just needed to be remastered. They removed lines from some of the boss battles like Dingo Dao and Dr. Engine for some reason. Even thought the lines helped more on the story because Dingo Dao is warning Crash that he's going to be facing up against much worse, which he does, and when battling with Dr. Entropy, he delivers his final line very weak instead of it being really powerful like in the original. The racing levels like Hog Ride are very terrible in control wise. The controls in that level are absolutely the worst. The motorcycle doesn't do what you're doing and it goes the other way, like when you're trying to turn left, the motorcycle still goes forward, and it basically delays the movement. The controls in the racing game are just broken, and the jet ski levels controls are terrible as well. Like they were trying to go for a more realism approach, and the jet ski was just super slow compared to the original. You wanted to turn, it took you super long to do that, and the jump is half-assed. The physics from Crash 2 apply in this game as well. While it's my second favorite in the original trilogy, Warped and Insane Trilogy is my least favorite, and it's because the water levels, I guess, being super boring, with the airplane levels, being there, and of course the motorcycles levels and the jet ski levels being really terrible. I think they could have delayed the game and, polished Warped a bit more. But besides those things, I like how the characters act during the cutscenes. It adds more to their character and it gives them a personality. You can see the emotion they show when they're talking, and it's absolutely fantastic. But overall, Crash Bandicoot Warped is still a beautiful game and it adds a lot of detail in it, but they could have improved a bit more, but it's still the same as the original with a few changes. The game does add a lot of vehicle levels in the game, and that's what makes it different from Crash Bandicoot 2. I'm not a big fan of vehicle levels, but at least it's better than Wrath of Cortex, of course. I rate Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped 7.5 out of 10 IGN. Something the whole trilogy suffers is the glitches, and there's way more glitches than the original trilogy if Vicarious Visions hasn't resolved for some reason. It makes the game sometimes unplayable, and they should really fix that with a patch. It's really easy in order to make the game way better than it already is. But overall, these games are really well made for a remaster, and it does more than developers will do for a quote-unquote remaster, with adding new features, improving lots of stuff from the original, and making the game harder, along with lots of new detail being put into the game and making the game more beautiful for old players and new players to enjoy. The reason why these games are so enjoyable till this day for old players and new players as well is its replayability. You can go and jump and straight to the levels and replay as many times as you want. Like when you're getting all the boxes to get the gems and running through the levels to get all the relics, that's what makes it replayable and enjoyable as well. These games are such beautiful gems, and I'm glad it got remade for the PS4. The levels look the same but more beautiful than you have ever seen them before, and it makes a perfect present for anybody who wants to have a fun challenge. The Sane Trilogy is one of my favorite PS4 games and one of the best games ever made, and Vicarious Visions did a really good job with making this game without having to have the original source code. The only real complaints for the Sane Trilogy that I have is the amount of glitches, which can easily be fixed with an update, and the physics. Well, it's something you're gonna have to be getting used to the Sane Trilogy, because I don't think they're gonna be fixing that anytime soon or any at all. It's a remaster done right, and it did a perfect job on bringing our Marsupio back with the original trilogy that we all know and love. Lots of developer companies should take notes on how Vicarious Visions did the Sane Trilogy so they can remaster the game from the past and do it good while adding new features to the table. Sane Trilogy sold a lot of money, making over more than $4 million in just the PlayStation 4, and it's now releasing multi-platform in July 10, 2018, and is going to make even more money there and there. Crash has finally returned with new games coming in the future and is staying for years to come. Crash Bandicoot is also, I guess, affecting other platform characters, and it's a good thing. They're giving Spyro a remaster, they're giving Medieval a remaster, and SpongeBob is also making a huge comeback with platform games, along with other platform game characters from other companies returning as well. And Crash is, I guess, bringing the platform genre much back and much better than it was ever before. I rate Crash Bandicoot Sane Trilogy 9 out of 10. Fantastic classics getting remade from the ground up with new additions that make the game superior from the original, and Vicarious Visions did a really fantastic job on doing it, and I hope to see new games coming from them. Of course, Crash Bandicoot. New players will enjoy this game and will join the Crash series for years to come. I absolutely recommend you guys, for those who haven't played the game, to buy it. It's out on the PS4 already, and for multi-platform, it's gonna be released on July 10, 2018. But for PlayStation 4, it's already out. Go buy it and enjoy it. Thank you guys very much for watching my Crash Bandicoot Sane Trilogy review. I had a lot of fun while making this for you guys, and I wanted to say thank you guys very much for 4K subscribers. It really means a lot to me, and I enjoy doing Crash Bandicoot videos for you guys. It's what I like to talk about, as Crash Bandicoot is my favorite mascot and the series as well. You guys are the best, and I'll be making more Crash Bandicoot videos in the future because I absolutely love Crash Bandicoot. Thank you guys very much for watching again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Johnny Cooper 64 signing off.